Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Newell, and I am the Executive Director and Senior Partner to Wabanaki Nations for the Abbey Museum, located in Penobscot, otherwise known as Bar Harbor, Maine. And welcome to Digital AMIM 2021. That song you just heard me singing is a rendition of the Passamaquoddy Welcome Dance, and it was a song taught to me very young by Blanche Sockabasin, a much revered elder and keeper of our traditional music. Thank you so much to Blanche for teaching that song to all of us and making sure we pass it along, and we use it as a way to open up the energy, give that sense of welcoming to what we're about to kick off here tonight. And tonight's kickoff performances features two artists who have exclusively made performances for the Abbey Museum for our kickoff event. We'll have Jennifer Pictou of the Mickmax Nation going to be doing some storytelling for you here tonight, as well as Firefly the Hybrid, Penobscot Nation. Firefly made his debut at Digital AMIM 2020 and has taken it to another level. You do not want to miss out on what we have coming up for you tonight. Also, just a reminder that the market event takes place tomorrow from 12 to 6. We'll be streaming that live from the Abbey Museum, 12 to 6 Eastern time. Make sure you tune in to meet our artists and find what they have for sale and get excited about what they got. And also a reminder that we have a contest, a People's Choice Award, that will be closing, the voting will be closing tonight at midnight. So you can follow the link in the chat, go to our website, and you can find the links. We encourage you to go there and vote for our People's Choice Award for our artists. It would mean a whole lot to them if you did that. And a special thank you to our sponsor, Lee Auto Mall, for their support in bringing us Digital AMIM 2021 this year. They have supported us for years, and they have made sure that we were able to bring this event to you again this year. Much thanks for that ongoing support. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our film festival beginning tonight as well. Our first film will begin tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The film is Kusapon. You'll be able to follow the link in the chat for registration. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to outro with a little round dance for you. Get everybody in the mood. Get on up. Get your energy flowing. And take it away, performers.
So we have had a request from somebody in the audience today, and that is for a very old Mickmax story called The Mickmax Snow Vampire. Of course, it's not snowing out, and we are down at the water. But this could happen anywhere in Maine, and that is what is truly terrifying. For in the days of the old ones, there was a Mickmax encampment. This Mickmax encampment had a young man, and when the young man was a very little boy, it was quickly learned that he had a lot of magic within him, or what the Passamaquoddies would call Medowlin. Now, with this magic, he did not use it for good. He tended to use it for more dark purposes. Evil, one might say. And so the village started to believe in him as the dark magician. Of course, magician was not really a word that we would use. So in Mickmax, they may have called him something like a dark buanak. The young man had evil intent in his heart. And as he grew, he wanted to do what other young men wanted to do, though. He wanted to have a partner. He wanted to have a family of his own. So what he did is he picked out a beautiful young maiden in the village, and he told his mother that he wanted to marry her. So in the traditional way of things, he sent his mother over to her parents in order to ask their permission. As he waited, he paced, and he paced, and he paced, and he paced back and forth, and as he paced, he thought, I'm a catch. I am strong, I am young, I am full of magic. She would absolutely want to marry me. When his mother came back, he could not wait for the answer. He runs out and he says, Mother, what did her parents tell you? And she said, I'm sorry, my son, but they said no. They explained that you are so full of dark magic, they are afraid that you will turn it on them at some point. He was furious, absolutely furious, and he did not believe his mother. So he went to the young woman's family himself. And as he trods along, he approaches the wigwam and he lifts up the flap and he ducks in and he sees her, and she is sitting on the bottom, on the floor, and she is weaving her ash splint baskets. And as she is diligently working, he goes over and he picks up a stick and he tosses it into her lap. If she accepts the stick, she accepts him. But if she rejects the stick and throws it away, she rejects his advance. What do you think she did? Don't be shy. She rejected. She rejected him by throwing the stick away. This infuriated the young man even more than he had been before. And he stormed out of the wigwam and back to his own. But on his way, he started thinking again, and he started to think how strong he was, how powerful he was. And he decided that this slight would not go unchallenged. So that night, he went into his special herb stash, and he put together a wicked concoction in his hand. It started to snow, and his footfalls were very, very slight. You could barely hear him move through the village that night. And as he approached her wigwam, he lifted up the flap and ducked in to find her asleep. Over to her sleeping body he crept, and he put the herbs over her nose and mouth, and then he said his magic words. They were full of horrible intent, but he wasn't done. He went outside and he collected snow in 2 large handfuls, and then he went back in and he put the big snowball underneath her neck, and then he left. The next morning, the young woman wakes up, and she is stiff and she is sore, and she feels cold to her very bones. She's ravenous, she's hungry. She goes running outside and she begins to gobble up snow by the handfuls. And her mother comes out and screaming at her, "What is wrong, my daughter?" She says, "I don't know." And she keeps shoving snow into her mouth. Her mother eventually collects her, gets her back inside the wigwam, but every day the young woman grows stronger and stronger, and she begins to become more feral, more monstrous in her appearance, very much like the things we know that exist in the far north. Her teeth begin to grow, her nails begin to get longer, and she begins to get a hunched back. And as the days go on, she becomes more and more misshapen, until one day, There were children playing outside of her parents' wigwam, and she heard them. And her parents had taken the time to keep her from others in the village by tying her with moose hide. She broke apart the moose hide that day, and then she ran around trying to get the children like a hungry wolf. They were terrified, obviously, and went home screaming to their parents. The next day, the chief came with 7 hunters to her father's wigwam, and her father knew what was going to happen. He begged and begged and begged the chief to not kill his daughter. But his daughter went to him, and misshapen as she was, she went up to him and said, "Father, you know this is the way it has to be. Please don't let me live like this. I cannot continue." And so the chief gave his command, and the 7 hunters all pulled an arrow and notched it and let it fly. 7 arrows thumped into her chest all at once, and she fell to the ground dead. But as she fell, a miraculous change overtook her, and she became a beautiful young woman by the time she hit the ground. But the arrows had disappeared. The chief, in order to finish this out, took his hunters and went on to the dark magician's wigwam, because he wanted to end this once and for all. As they approach the wigwam, they hear this keening, and the keening is bouncing off the trees. It's everywhere. It is so loud, they think they will go deaf. But they recognize it also as the keening of his mother. For when they approach his wigwam and they lift the flap and they duck in, what they find is her over his dead body with 7 arrows sticking out of his chest. This leaves us with a question. Because the story is the Mickmax snow vampire. So who is the real vampire here? Was it the young woman who was changed into a creature with a ravenous hunger for human flesh? Or was it the young man with the darkness in his heart that was so tied to the young woman that upon her death, he died as well? There was an old Mickmac man named Old Joe, or at least that's what his friends and neighbors called him, neighbors that lived a long way away. When he would ramble into town, they would call him Old Joe. No one quite knew how old Joe was, but he was aged and he liked his own way about things. And he would go back to his cabin in the deep woods, and he would live by himself, and he had a pretty comfortable life. One November, it was very, very cold, and as Joe had finished up his evening meal, he lit a pipe, and he began to smoke his pipe as he sat by the fire in his chair, rocking back and forth. As he's enjoying his pipe, he starts to hear footsteps, and the footsteps start to get closer and closer to his cabin, and the crunching of the leaves and the crunching and snapping of twigs, and he's listening very intently as he's smoking, and then the door handle begins to jiggle and turn. As the door swings open, Joe turns to look, and wouldn't you know, it was his old friend. Come to visit him. Wasn't that a nice thing to do? His old friend, he was so excited to see him. He said, "My friend, I have not seen you in years. Come in, have some tea." And he put on a pot of tea, and he sat, and he shared his tea and his tobacco with his good friend. They told stories long into the night about times when they were children, the jokes they had played, the work that they had done. And after a time, it was very, very dark outside, and the wind was beginning to whip around the cabin. And his friend said, "Old Joe, it's time for me to go." And as he gets up, he goes to the door, and he turns around and says, "Joe, I'll be back, and I'll be seeing you soon." And he closes the door, and he walks away. Joe hears the footsteps outside his cabin until they fade away. And as Joe sat there still rocking in front of his fireplace, all of a sudden he sat up very suddenly, and he dropped his pipe. And the pipe shattered on the floor in front of his feet, because Joe had remembered the reason why he had not seen his friend in so many years, is his friend had been dead for several of those. what did his friends say to him before he left? I'll be seeing you soon. This kind of ties into some of the things that I've heard from elders a lot, is the portent of death, that messages that they receive will tell them of their impending death, their impending transition to the other life, the next phase in our existence. And this is something that is often repeated many times, but always with flair, like Old Joe. The Bootleg Tunnel, that is a great story. Okay, see, the thing is that George Mackay was a bootlegger, but he also owned a garage and a bunch of taxis in town. So the thing is that he was very, very clever in this, because after the taxis were done running for the day, then they would load them up with booze, and then they would drive them around the island and make their alcohol deliveries. Okay, but he got caught in 1923. So he got caught, he was sent to jail in Bangor for an entire year. And as he's sitting in his cell contemplating his belly button lint, he's trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life after I get out of this? And he decides he wants to be a legitimate businessman. So he doesn't have the money to actually create this particular theater. So what he does is he goes to a very good friend of his, who is the kingpin of rum running in Bar Harbor. That kingpin was named Daniel Herlihy, an Irishman from Bangor. He came down and said, nobody's running booze, I can fix that. So he did. So George Mackay goes to Daniel Herlihy. Daniel doesn't have the money, not out of his pocket. So he fixes it, so they go down to New York, they wine and dine investors, and then George Mackay comes back with $150,000. And on June 6, 1932, the Criterion Theater opened. It actually took a little over a year to construct. The blueprints were created in 1930. It started to take place, the building actually started to take place in 1931. And you know what? As it was being built, George Mackay had a little conundrum. He said, do I want to put a parking garage where the basement should be, or do I want to have cash? Do I want to put a speakeasy in there? And of course, when you make a deal with the kingpin of rum running, you know which one won out. So while the theater was here up top, there was indeed a speakeasy in the basement of this particular theater. In the back of the basement, there is a tunnel that has been labeled the Rum Tunnel. Now, there's only one way into the speakeasy and one way out. So when the police would come and raid the speakeasy in this theater, they either had to all cram together and run up 4 very, very hard cement steps and all try to cram out the door at once, or some could actually get into the tunnel underneath and they would go all the way down to the waterfront. And of course, the police could see them run out of the tunnel down there. And they would say, oh, you know, there goes Mary, there goes Bob. And they knew these folks. So then the next day they'd show up at Mary and Bob's homes and give them a citation for being at an illegal speakeasy, because they didn't need to catch them to see them. This is one of the most interesting features of this particular theater, and it ties very much into the history of Bar Harbor, because Bar Harbor wouldn't look like it does today if it weren't for the massive amounts of money made during Prohibition. Remember, Prohibition was from 1920 to 1933 federally, but Maine went dry in 1851. That means that we were dry almost 70 years prior to federal prohibition going into place. That just means that we had 70 years to dig the tunnels. We were really good at this. We were really good at hiding our booze. There was booze hiding out in the bay, in empty homes, in the basement of the local greenhouse. Of course, we have the tunnels, we have all of the dance halls, and we have the casinos, the hotels, and the private gentlemen's clubs as well. If you wanted booze during Prohibition, you come to Bar Harbor and somebody would put a glass in your hand. We sponsored a ghost hunt here in the theater. So one of the things that we did is some of us broke away and went down into the old speakeasy, and we started to ask questions, and we were, recording any answers. We were looking for an electronic voice phenomenon, or an EVP. We didn't necessarily get a voice, but we did record heavy booted footsteps coming from the old tunnel area to where we were, and they kind of stood there. Apparently we weren't very interesting, because then they turned around and we caught them going back out to where they had come from. But there was a young man who came from a local TV station a couple of years ago, and the staff members here will tell you that he was fond of telling people, "I don't believe in ghosts." Well, the folks who work here know what goes on in this theater, and I would put it up against any haunted theater in the country. This particular gentleman was invited to go down to the Rum Tunnel, and he was let in all by himself. And he took his equipment with him. As he is going down the tunnel and he is filming this, he gets shoved from behind by two big hands. And he films himself, he's actually falling, and he has it all on his camera. And he catches himself, bounces back up, and he whips around, and he's filming behind him to see who is the one who ran up and pushed him. Because he's hot at this point, he is mad. And all he got was an empty tunnel. He was so far inside, you could not see the light from the room that he had left to get inside the tunnel. That's how far in he was. So he came out shaking like a leaf, white as a sheet, and a believer. We are often fond of saying at Bar Harbor Ghost Tours, we don't have to prove anything to you. We don't have to make you believe in ghosts. If you stick around Bar Harbor long enough and in the right places, the ghosts will do that all by themselves. And this is one of those places. So here we are at the Abbey Museum Courtyard. We are wrapping up this evening, and I really thank all of you for coming tonight. You have been fabulous. But I wanted to leave you with a special story. And this is why I'm standing here near the stones in the courtyard, because this little stone right here reminds me of another story, a very old Mickmax story, about a man who wanted to live forever. What a nice thought, right? Immortality, it's not just with us. This idea goes back many, many, many centuries. And we Mi'kmaq have a story that goes in the days of the old ones. In a Mi'kmaq village, there was a man, and the man was full of magic. And he had a special kind of magic, because every autumn he would go around to people in his village and he would ask them, remember, when I die, and I'm going to die soon, bury me very deep, but in 2 weeks, come back and dig me up. Every year he did this, and every year the villagers did as he bade. And of course, when they dug him back up, this old man would climb out of the hole as a young, renewed, vigorous man. And over the year, he would age and continue to age until the following fall. The same thing would happen. He would go around to other people in the village and ask them to bury him, but 2 weeks later, come back and dig him back up. This was very important, to dig him back up. Otherwise, he could not come back. He could not rejuvenate as a young man. Years and years go by. People in the village start to get a little uneasy about this, because this guy, he gets old every year. He dies. They bury him, and out of the ground he pops when they dig him back up. This is a very, very awful thing to strike the fear in the hearts of the village people. So the villagers start to think he might actually turn his power on us one day. Who knows what else he can do? This is only one thing that we see of him, but maybe he has hidden powers that we don't have. Maybe this is something that could cause us harm later on. So that year, when he became an old man, he asked them the same thing. I'm going to die soon, and when I die, I want you to dig me back up in 2 weeks. Everybody he talked to said, absolutely, we will do that. You can count on us. And what happened is they did not do this. They did not go back and dig him back up out of the ground. What they did is when they buried his body, they took rocks, much bigger than this one. They took rocks of all sizes and they put them in the hole. They filled the hole with stones upon his corpse. And the larger the stones were, the heavier it pushed down on the man in the hole. And eventually they built a cairn of stones over the top of him to mark where he was buried. Then they packed up their village and they left, never to return to that spot. To this day, that man has not been unburied. To this day, that man is still out in our woods, buried somewhere. And I know that it's very tempting to go along in the roots of Acadia and you see these stone cairns that are built up, or maybe on the shore, people pile rocks and you come across these piles of rocks. Never, ever, ever move those rocks, because you never know which pile of stones will release the man. And when he comes out, he's not going to be happy.
No, it's fine. Oh, we were off. Okay, sorry. All right, we're back. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. A little bit of a technical glitch there. So thank you once again to Jennifer Pictou for that awesome presentation. Once again, you can follow Jennifer's Bar Harbor Ghost Tours and actually book her for one of her Bar Harbor Ghost Tours if you follow the link on the right. She's a member of the Mickmax Nation and does a lot of great storytelling here in the region. She brought us some special ones that she doesn't do on her normal tour. So thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you to the Criterion Theater, especially for allowing us to film on site and tell some of that history, that spooky history. And also thank you once again to our sponsor, Lee Auto Malls. Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder that we have our film festival coming up at 7 p.m. with the film Kusapon. The link to register, you're going to need to register if you want to watch the film. It will begin at 7 p.m. sharp, and you look in the chat, click on the link and follow it and register, and you will be sent the link to the film. Please remember tonight to vote for our People's Choice Award for the Digital AMIM competition. Voting will be open all the way until midnight. So please get on in there. Vote for your favorite artists. They would appreciate your support. We're going to be adding that link to the chat as well. The contest, the People's Choice Award, sponsored by William Blair. Many thanks to all of them. And just a little bit of procedural. If you go to vote, you're going to click on the word vote, choose how to register, and then you're going to click the word vote again. And when you have a dialog box that confirms that you have voted, you have successfully voted. So just a little bit of a help along the way. And up next, ladies and gentlemen, get ready, hold on to your seats. We have Firefly the Hybrid, and just parrots a little bit of a warning at the very end. There's a small amount of strong language. We just want to give you a brief warning about that casual language. But ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Firefly the Hybrid.
Since time immemorial, our ancestors have told us that we come from the stars. And if we come from the stars, then we must have family amongst the stars.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Firefly, and I'm from the Penobscot Nation, born and raised in beautiful Wabanaki territory. It's an honor to join all of you tonight at the Digital Abbey Museum Indian Market. We're coming to you from the beautiful circle at the Abbey Museum in downtown Bar Harbor, Maine. Tonight, I'd like to dedicate my performance to my mentor, Tribal Elder Wadey Akins. Wadey has transitioned to the spirit world, but we feel his presence with us tonight, especially knowing that he sat right in this spot and sang many of the songs that he taught me. So I perform tonight for you with love from my heart and share my good energy with all of you, and I can feel your good energy in return. Thank you. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm doing real good. Where's everybody visiting from? Let us know in the comments. You see that little heart? Go ahead and press that and show us some love. So, for about a year now, I've been practicing the piano and practicing my Wabanaki music and putting the two together. I've also been writing original songs, original lyrics, putting the traditional Wabanaki music, notes, chords, with some of the lyrics that I've written. Just feels right. This song that I'm going to do for you is an example of that work. And it's about a boy who upset a girl. Look my way, 'cause I'm Thank you. Tahoe. My name is Firefly, and it was an honor to perform for you tonight at the Abbey Museum Digital Indian Market.
All right, that was amazing. Thank you to Firefly the Hybrid, bringing all the energy there. 2 days of filming on site here at the Abbey Museum for that segment, and we want to thank Firefly for bringing all of that and putting so much into production. Jennifer Pictou as well. We spent time filming those live here in Bar Harbor. All of this brought to you by the Abbey team. So I want to put a special shout out to my coworkers here at the Abbey Museum for really doing everything they can to up the production. Thank you to Firefly the Hybrid, and also thank to all those involved in the performance, Donna DeConnie Brown and Carolyn Rapkevian. Also, reminder, folks, to vote for our People's Choice Award for the Digital AMIM competition. Voting is open until midnight tonight. It is sponsored by William Blair. And once again, some instructions. When you click on vote, you're going to click vote first. You're going to choose how to register. You're going to click vote again. And when you have a dialog box pop up that confirms you have voted, then you have voted successfully. We have just put the voting link in the chat for your convenience. Also, ladies and gentlemen, coming up at 7 p.m., we have Kusapan, and we want to thank you all for being with us tonight. Join us tomorrow at noon, May 15th, the Digital Abbey Museum Indian Market 2021 coming straight at you here from the Abbey Museum. We have new artists, new performers. We cannot wait to see you. And that is it for our kickoff event. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will see you tomorrow at